Want to keep your personal number private but still stay connected? With Line 2, you can get a second phone line right on your device with a super simple app and no need for another phone. Whether it's for online shopping, dating, or shielding your main number from spam, Line 2 is an easy way to manage it all. Ready for peace of mind without breaking the bank? Call, text, block, and more for only $9.99. Get started with line2.com/audio or download Line 2 in any app store today. Line 2, your second line simplified.
Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Hello, and welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today, we are having a special crossover episode with a pod of Smut and Wingspan. Hi, ladies. How are you?
Hello, we're good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm so happy to have you both on here. So for those who aren't familiar with your podcast, why don't you introduce yourselves for us real quick?
I can start.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Sam. I am one half of a pod of Smut and Wingspan. We started the podcast just because we didn't have anyone to talk to about our smutty fantasy books. And we thought there might be people out there who also don't have anybody to talk to about their smutty fantasy books. So we started the podcast to try and be everybody's book bestie. For those who didn't have one, we're trying to be just somebody that people can talk to about all of their books. We started in March of this year, so we're still relatively new to podcasting and to Book Talk and Bookstagram, but we've made a lot of friends, I think, across both platforms, and got some of our best book recommendations from friends that we've made, I would say.
And hello, I'm B. I'm the other half of a pod of Smut and Wingspan. So yeah, basically everything that Sam just said. We were two real life best friends. We always say real life because it makes it sound like other friends are not real, but like we were non-book friends in real life friends. And last year I became obsessed with a little series called ACOTAR and basically nagged Sam for 6 months until she joined me on this fantasy romantasy journey. And then, yeah, after like so many months of just like sending each other 15-minute voice notes, we just decided, let's do a podcast. And here we are.
I love that. I didn't know voice notes could go that long.
Yeah, we always push it to the full limit. Like whatever the limit is on whatever we're using, we were pushing it. And Sam basically read my TBR up to that point. And that year was a really big year for me because I was on maternity leave. So I read a lot of books. I think it was like nearly 80. And Sam basically was reading my TBR. So there was a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, I was like, why have you made me read this? I can't stop crying.
Those are always the best recommendations, though. They really are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted us to go into our top Romantasy recs. Between our two podcasts, I'm sure we have a great list that we can create. And we're not going to rate anything like, top 10 or anything because I could never do that. And I couldn't put anyone else through that because that sounds like a nightmare. How do you pick the top one? You don't. So let's go into some of our just favorite Romantasy reads.
Shall I start, Sam?
Yeah, go ahead.
You can.
Okay. I feel like mine and Sam's list is basically one, and we're just going to steal each other's like books, and we'll just have to keep like swapping them out because I feel like we're like hive mind at this point. The first book I think I'd have to recommend, and I feel like the obvious answer for this podcast would be ACOTAR, but I feel like that's recommended enough. Like, I don't think I need to fight that corner any more than it already is. Like, it speaks for itself. The first book or series I would recommend it's pretty big, but it's not huge. But it's a series called the Sacred Stone series. The first book is called A Dawn of Onyx. The second book is A Promise of Peridot, and book 3, which is literally coming out like, is it next week, Sam, or the week after? Like, beginning of October. It's called A Reign of Rose. And then it's done. It's a trilogy. So it's written by an author called Kate Golder, and she was an indie author when she released Dawn of Onyx when I first read it about 2 years ago. since then has been traditionally picked up, I believe, by Berkeley. I think that's who she's been picked up by. So now it's like everywhere, you know, Barnes and Noble, Waterstones over here, like you can get it everywhere. But it's one of those series that I just don't think is like spoken about enough, but it ticks everything you want from a romantasy. We did like deep dives into it on our podcast. Reign of Rose is coming out soon. We're definitely going to do an episode for that, and we've actually got Kate Golden herself coming on the podcast soon to talk about Reign of Rose. But there's nothing particularly like, wow, I've never seen that done before, I've never read that done before. It's very like tick box romantasy, but it just, I don't know what it is, it just does everything you want from like an easy romantasy read. Fae, like shadow daddy, enemies to lovers, dragons, white, like it's just everything you want. One really cool idea I'd say is like the regions or the courts are split up into precious gems. So you have like onyx, peridot, rose, amber,
Opal,
I want to say is another one.
yeah.
Opal. So like, I don't know what it is about that book. There's just some kind of special sauce in it that just hits everything you want in a romantasy, I guess.
I really love the idea of the regions being separated like stones. That is a really creative take on maps. And I am a sucker for a good, like, mapped out world in my fantasy, especially like if you draw me a map in your book, I'm going to read it. Like that is one thing that I just can never get over in a book. I love when they have a map. So having the regions split up in a creative way like that, I love that.
Yeah, it's just like and I would say that like maybe slightly different to anyone who's read the ACOTAR books, that it isn't that the courts aren't as centered around the sort of like themes as like ACOTAR, but it's still like a really big part of the region, and there's a lot of like attributes to the regions that make sense. So like Onyx is what the first book focuses on, and obviously the second and third, but like there's a reason why it's Onyx, and it all, when you get into the book, it all kind of makes sense. And yeah, like apart from that, like there's nothing super original, but Kate Golden just writes such enjoyable characters. We loved book one, and then book two came out at the beginning of this year. I think it was like April, and we were like a little apprehensive, and not in a bad way, but you know, when you just don't know if something's going to live up to like your expectation. And then book two, oh my gosh, like all I feel like I need to say are two words: strip poker. That's all I need to say that happens in book two. If that doesn't sell you on this book, then I don't know what will. So yeah, that would be my first recommendation.
I love that. Sam, do you want to take us off with one?
Yeah. I think, no surprise coming from our podcast, I think my first recommendation would be Quicksilver by Callie Hart. I think if you're not huge into fantasy, and maybe you're wanting to get into fantasy, you know, you haven't really dipped your toe in yet, then Quicksilver isn't like too heavy in the fantasy world that you would like get like completely blown away by it and think like, I can't keep up with this. Which I think like if you recommended like Throne of Glass to somebody who'd never read fantasy before, like it's like a mammoth series, and I think it can be really overwhelming. But I think Callie Hart has like struck the right note between it being a romance and a fantasy. Like you've got all the fantastical elements, and like the fact that it's centered around alchemy, like we don't really see that a lot, like the use of alchemy and the use of metals. And I think that was such an interesting part of that book for me personally, like reading about like the alchemy side of things and her forging the swords and things like that. I just thought it was so clever. And the fact that like the Quicksilver was used to travel through realms, I just thought it was a really different take on, you know, we've seen so many fantasy books where they're traveling and you know, the journey from one place to the other, and it can get quite boring just reading about somebody, you know, traveling by horseback or however they're traveling. So I think the fact that you like go into these Quicksilver pools and you come out in a different realm, it's like quick enough that like it gets you from point A to B, and you're not stuck in this traveling, you know, chapters for you know, however many pages, and then you're straight back into the action of the book. And I think her going from like a mortal realm to a fae realm, I just think the whole like premise of the book was so interesting. And yeah, I'm really excited for book two, but I think we've said this on the podcast, that could have been a standalone book for me. It was so enjoyable, and I finished it and I didn't think like, oh right, I need book 2. Like it was good enough that it could have just like, if she finished there and decided not to do anything else with it, that would have been absolutely fine for me.
Yeah, I think like Quicksilver, I think what makes it, and we said kind of the similar critique we had about Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I think it's really refreshing having non-fantasy or romantasy authors writing romantasy, because I think it freshens it up. So like Callie Hart being a dark romance author historically, then I think it brings like a new freshness to the genre, which sometimes it can get a little, like you said, the traveling, the, you know, third act breakups, they can get a little yeah.
Yeah, honestly, third act breakups, they're not my favorite trope. They're really not. But I wouldn't say that I hate them, because there are cases where they are done very well and that it just kind of rips your heartstrings out. But when it's done over something that like doesn't feel real to you, like if you're not feeling the pain with the third act breakup, it's like, what is the point of this? Like, you guys are just being dumb. Stay together. You're being dumb.
I think particularly when it's done doubled with a miscommunication trope. That's when I'm like, there's, like you said, there's some, I don't like to say I dislike third act breakups across the board, because there are some that I really enjoy. I like that. I like that like tension. I like that build, and then ooh they aren't they. But yeah, I think when it's miscommunication, no, not for me.
Yeah, I hate miscommunication tropes. It is like the one trope that I just can't get behind. I was reading last night and I said to B, I was like, I know there's a miscommunication trope coming. They're laying the groundwork for this to be a miscommunication trope, and I just hate it. There's just something that makes me so anxious about a miscommunication trope. Like, I know what's coming, I know the truth, and now you're all arguing, and I hate miscommunication.
And it's not even just in romantasy or romance. There, you know, when it's done in other genres too, it makes me angry. Like, just use your words, people. Like in House of the Dragon, which is, you know, big show right now based off of Fire and Blood from George R.R. Martin. The whole thing stems from a war that wipes out major families, wipes out all these dragons, and completely changes not just the political landscape of the entire country, but their future success. And it all stems down to one miscommunication on a deathbed, because someone didn't know her story. She didn't know her lore. And everyone in this family names their son the same damn name, Aegon, over and over and over again. And so now there's this massive war, and people are going to die, and dragons going to get wiped out, which they absolutely destroyed their entire house and their lineage over one miscommunication. And it's like, if y'all just talked and communicated better, none of this would happen.
Yeah, I really can't get behind it. I can't even think of a time where it's done well, because that's how much I dislike miscommunication as a trope. I can't even say like, oh, well, this one. I'm like, no.
But I was just thinking then, like, is there an occasion where I think it's done well? I don't know if you can consider it a miscommunication trope, but like you said, so I think the biggest issue is because generally you are experiencing it from the like main character's POV, you know that there's a miscommunication, right? But I think it can be done well when sometimes you're blind to the miscommunication, if that makes sense. So a series that I think kind of does it sort of is like Throne of Glass. So in Empire of Storms, I think at the end of Empire of Storms, there's like, because it's written from the third person, like Sarah J. Maas creates a lot more mystery around the main character's like inner thoughts. So there's a lot of things that you don't know that main character has made decisions of. And the end of Empire of Storms, which is the penultimate book, there's just so many like plot reveal after plot reveal, and your brain is just like, oh my gosh, because all the way through there was like Easter eggs for it, but because it's not a first person POV, you don't know that this character's gone and done all these things. So I think that is is a rare example of like how it can be done really well. But yeah, I agree with you. Generally, because you're experiencing it through the main character's eyes, like you know what's happening, like you know what's coming.
Yeah, for sure. Is that a dagger tattoo on your arm?
Yeah, it's actually a sword from Throne of Glass. So it's Goldrin, which is one of the main character's sword. Yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Great job. Yeah, so I have to admit something. And it's really funny that I have, a Sarah J. Maas podcast on here. I have not read a single thing written by Sarah J. Maas at all. No ACOTAR, no Throne of Glass, no Crescent City, none of it.
We kind of like by name we branded ourselves an SJM podcast, but actually we haven't done like that much.
No, we don't have that many episodes on her.
I think it's because, like you said, it is huge in this genre, like it is big, but we just love the genre as a whole. And I think like ACOTAR was both of our windows into the genre. Like I hadn't read in 8 years. Sam was a reader, but not a fantasy at all. And ACOTAR for both of us was that like gateway into this genre. But I think what we try and do more is like pave out, okay, we've just read ACOTAR, but now here's what we would sort of like recommend you go to once you finish these books, because as wonderful as we think they are, they're not the be all and end all of the genre. And there's going to be some people who just don't like them. And that's okay. That's fine. And that's what we love about, well, we always say this all the time, we love about the social media, love about this podcast is like, we can talk to people who have difference of opinions. Like it doesn't mean it's a bad book because we didn't like it or they didn't like it.
Yeah, I have so many guests and authors who bring up ACOTAR or just other Sarah J. Maas books. And I'm just like, I have to tell you, I haven't read any of them.
I think as well with Sarah J. Maas, like this isn't like a dig, but it's a hard sell because one, like they're big series, right? So it's an investment. Like particularly, we have so many of our listeners message about Throne of Glass, and they're like, "I really want to start it, but what if I don't like it?" And we're like, "We feel you because that is an expensive box set to buy if you decide you don't like it." And also like they're big books, big world building. So and then like they're not available on KU, so it's always like. It's like making that commitment. Like Sam was lucky, she just stole all of my versions of everything and got to read everything for free. But if you don't have like a friend, like when I first started, I didn't have anyone to like steal books off. Like I just had to make the plunge. And like I said, Throne of Glass is expensive. But we always say like, for us, if you read A Court of Mist and Fury and you don't like it, then we will hold our hands up and accept the fact that ACOTAR just isn't for you. But we've had so many people that read the first book and go, oh, like, I don't know, it's just not what the hype says. And like one of our really good listeners has literally done that recently, where she messaged us like, guys, I love you, but I read ACOTAR and I just didn't like it. And we were like, read Mist and Fury, and if you still don't like it, that's okay. We're wrong. Like we'll accept the defeat. But like for us, I think that is like if that doesn't do it for you, then it's not gonna hit. Yeah.
Is that the second book in the series?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so at least make it through the first two.
Yeah.
The third, yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you finish Mist and Fury second book and it's not for you, it doesn't. When I say it's still good, but it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
For me personally too, usually the second book in a series, and not always, but often, it just often blows everything away for me. And I don't know if it is just because, we've had all that character building and world setting in the first book, and now the second one, we can just like really dive into the plot. But my favorite example of this is like the Hunger Games, which I'm obsessed with, and I talk about so many times on this podcast. Like I love the Hunger Games, but Catching Fire is one of the absolute best things I've ever read in my entire life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the same goes for, well, this one I was going to bring up as one of my Romantasy recs. So we'll just segue into that now. So my Romantasy rec is going to be the Cruel Prince series. I love this trilogy so much. And that second book, amazing. Holly Black really knocked it out of the park with that one.
Yes, we love the Cruel Prince trilogy, but we very nearly didn't become Holly Black fans, because when I first started like reading this genre, I actually had heard of The Cruel Prince, but I picked up The Book of Night, which is like her standalone kind of more adulty, I guess. And it's one of only 2 books I have ever DNF'd. I just couldn't, I don't know what it was, just couldn't get behind it. So that was my first experience of Holly Black. And then when Cruel Prince came on Kindle Unlimited, I was like, maybe I don't try this, because I really didn't enjoy the other one. So glad I did, because obviously like we are obsessed with that trilogy. And I've actually just audiobooked The Stolen Heir and The Prisoner's Throne. And we were talking about this recently. Like, I was nervous that like it wouldn't live up to the trilogy, but I have to say it was very, very good.
Yeah, with The Cruel Prince, when I first started it, like I was seeing stuff on, TikTok, and I was at a bookstore with a friend of mine, and we both just bought the series because they had the trilogy pack there. So we both bought a copy of it, and then it sat on our shelves, as books sometimes do. And I eventually picked up the first one. I was, getting through my reading list, and it was springtime. Like, I just really want to find something that I can just read this weekend and push through. And so on a whim, I picked up The Cruel Prince. And honestly, at the beginning, I was so like shocked at, like, you were just thrown into this world with no warning and no preparation at all. Like, first couple chapters, and there's just murder, murder, murder. And at first I was like, what? I was so like shocked. It was like, it almost felt like a type of culture shock, but through a book. And so I almost DNF'd it. And then I'm like, well, it's the only book I brought with me this weekend, so I'll just keep reading some more. And by the time I got to that like Act 2 start, the end of Act 1, I was so hooked. I could not believe the twist. Obviously I love the romance story behind it, but what really sold this book for me was all the political intrigue with the Fae. And that, there's a huge big twist in the middle that completely changes the entire tone and direction of the story. And I immediately couldn't put it down. I read the entire trilogy plus the 2 like ebook novellas, and all in one weekend. I was so hooked.
Yeah, I think we use The Cruel Prince as like a standard all the time, particularly like, because just again, despite the name of our podcast, we don't always read smut. Like, we do like YA. It doesn't have to have smut in it for us. And sometimes we'll read stuff that is maybe YA or doesn't have as much smut or so on. And we say to ourselves, is it because it's YA that we're just not enjoying it? And then we're always like, no, because The Cruel Prince exists and we love that trilogy. And as well, like, I think what's so amazing about Holly Black as an author, because I think in interviews she cited saying like, I could never write smut because I just don't think I can do it. Not because she's like, scared. She just doesn't think she's capable. But I think like some of those like tension scenes between Jude and Carden, the fact that they fade to black, to me, some of them are way steamier than books with there's actual, showing you what's going on, because I think that's how wonderful her writing is. The tension that she builds between the 2 of them is just crazy.
The chemistry is just off the charts, and I absolutely agree. Like, there is, besides the fact that they are teenagers and there shouldn't be smut anyway because they're children, but taking that out of it, I feel like having this be a spicy story would kind of take away from that chemistry and that tension between Jude and Carden.
Yeah, I just think like the angsty yearning burning, like that is more than enough for me in this book. Like the way Holly Black writes it is fantastic.
Yeah, in many cases, angst and chemistry can outdo spice for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Some matches are temporary, but your privacy shouldn't be. With Line 2, you get a second phone line just for dating. No need to share your personal number until you're ready. You can chat, text, and even block numbers, all while keeping things fun and private. It's perfect for online dating, blind dates, or just keeping things light. When you're ready to move on, Line 2 lets you cut ties without any drama. Dating should be fun and carefree. Line 2 keeps it that way. Ready to date on your terms? Visit line2.com/audio or download Line 2 in the App Store today.
Going back to kind of like you were talking about the second book in that series being your favorite, the same we say about Akatar. Like there's so many of our favorite series when we look at the pattern, like book 2, we generally tend to always give 5 stars because like you said, you get through that world building, you can really focus on like right character and plot. But that's one of the things, to go back to Quicksilver, is that we both said Quicksilver did in one book, very different to most series, is usually you read the first one, but you need the second one to really feel like you're getting into it. And Quicksilver's a pretty big book, but it's not like ginormous.
Yeah.
Like it didn't feel like a long read. And that is one thing I will say about Quicksilver that Carrie Hart achieves in one book, is you feel like you're getting 2 in 1, because what she plot-wise, world building, all of it wraps up in book 1. Like we said, if she didn't write a second book,
Yeah.
I think I'd be okay, because it was such a good read.
Definitely. Now, my second Romantasy rec is kind of opposite of that. It is heavy on the spice, but it's also very much high fantasy. You can tell that the author is a very eloquent and extremely educated woman, and she is. I met her. She's wonderful. So this rec is the Kashiel's Dart or Kashiel's Legacy series by Jacqueline Carey. One of my all-time favorite series. I think it really was the first like spicy book I ever read, any genre. And it was around before Romantasy was even coined as a term. It was just considered high fantasy or romance. Like you couldn't have it both ways, but this book really excelled with both of them.
So one of the authors that our first ever author that we ever interviewed, Penn Cole, who wrote a series called The Kindred, or writes a series called The Kindred Curse Saga. We always ask our authors in our interviews, like, what's 3 books that you would recommend that are like not your own? And that is what she recommended. That was exactly like you said, that was her like first dip into fantasy. Like she was like, I never read anything like it. It's super spicy, it's really high fantasy. And yeah, I feel like it was so many people's first. Like it's on our TBR, we're going to read it. But yeah, we've just heard so many people say kind of like a similar experience, that it was kind of doing something that no one was doing back then, really.
Yeah, and it has started kind of making its rounds again now that Romantasy is on the rise. And she did recently release Castiel's Servant, which is the first novel through the love interest point of view. And what's really interesting about their connection is he is basically a type of a monk or a priest. And so he is very sexually closed, and he is very much by the books and got to follow the rules and, follow what my brotherhood has in store for me. Whereas she is a courtesan and a spy. They actually call her the whore master of spies. And not only is she a courtesan, but she has been blessed or cursed by a trickster god to basically be super into sadomasochism. So not only is this spicy, but this is like, there's a lot of BDSM elements that come into play here as well in a fantasy way. It's a lot of so much political intrigue, which is clearly a theme in my romantasies, is the political intrigue. That's actually what I'm here for, whether it's spicy or not. And this one really excels on that and bringing 2 very different types of characters together as they navigate this field and, find their way to each other.
Yeah, I think like that's something that I think in our romantasies we do like. And I think what we love about this genre particularly is that you can get books that have like political intrigue. Like you said about the Court Prince series, there's another series by Daniel L. Jensen called The Bridge Kingdom, which is like, oh my gosh, some of the best political. If you love politics, like, oh my gosh, it's so. But I think like authors like that, what I love about this genre is they make it so readable, because I think if you were to tell me like a non-romantasy book was about political intrigue, I'd be like, oh, don't think that's for me. But what I love is that it doesn't make you, I don't ever feel stupid when I read these books. I know that's a really silly thing to say, but I think a lot of the times when I've read other genres, for me, and we always say that it's about like enjoyment. So sometimes it can get a little too like nitty gritty when it comes to it. But I think, like you mentioned, that book and so many others, that they can do it and still make you feel like you're reading a romantasy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think like the biggest complaint that Kashiel's Dart get is like sometimes it is it's not always easy to read. It's a lot to chew on. And it's one, I mean, it took me probably a month to read it. And I don't want to scare anyone off like that with that, but it is one that you kind of have to commit to. But it is one that I have to recommend all the time. And there are some related spin-off series as well. I think there's a total of 3 series that are all interconnected now, which I love. When you just keep giving us more content, bring in another character and give them a series. Love it. But the world building is so well done and so detailed. And you have they touch on different religious concepts. We have something here where there are houses in this very sex positive world, and each has their own like motto and their own kind of, way that they behave and way that they do things. It's almost like factions. There's like different factions. And I think that is something that a lot of high fantasy has that really draws people in. And like when it first came out, there was all these like quizzes, which type of house are you from? And you throw any of that into a fantasy world and I am automatically there. I'm here for it every time.
That kind of brings me on to my second one, because I was talking about Pen Cole, who we interviewed, recommending that book as well. So she's an author of a series called the Kindred Curse Saga. And after we interviewed her and she mentioned like that book, I kind of went and did a little Google before adding it to the TBR. And I'll have to say that like you can tell Penn takes so much inspiration from that book. So like the Kindred Curse Saga is, how do I describe the Kindred Curse Saga? It's so difficult, but like if you love a map, like you said that you do, it's like the map of all maps, basically. So the world is effectively like a donut, if that makes sense. So it's like I won't even say an island. It's a huge like world that's just one big continuous circle. And you effectively have, do they call them courts or realms, Sam? I'm trying to remember what realms. And each realm is like connected to another. So you effectively can't travel from one to the other. It's just this one big continuous loop. And they all effectively have like 2 sides of magic. So you have like Luminos is the one that the main character's from, which is like light and dark. Then you'll have like, I'm trying to remember Sam will probably know the names better than I do. But you'll have
like Montios, which they're like in the mountains and they can control like the air, like the like wind and like solar energy. There's a fire realm that can control fire. There's a water realm and they can control water. I can't remember all of them.
Yeah, there's a few of them. But there's a whole like spiel in the beginning of the book that gives you the rundown. But like the more you talk about, the other series that you mentioned, like I can see Pen Cole's influence from that, because that is very structured in like a similar way. And yeah, the Kindred Curse Saga is, or Spark of the Everflame is the name of the first book. So it's Spark,
Glow, Heat, and then Burn is coming.
Burn is coming out. And we got recommended these all the time. They're on Kindle Unlimited. Pen was an indie author. She literally released like 3 books in the space of like 18 months. And book 4 is due anytime soon. Again, another indie author that's just got a traditional contract, which is amazing. And yeah, they were recommended for so long. And we were like, yeah, we will get to it. We will get to it. And people kept saying like, you need to read this. And we were like, And then we read it and we were just like, why did we put this off for so long? Like we literally blitzed all 3 books in like what, a week?
Yeah,
if
it was
that,
ridiculous.
I think. Yeah, which is just insane. We were just obsessed with the series. And again, another kind of like, I feel like underrated series. Like you just don't see it recommended enough. But like it's just such a like good example of the genre, I guess.
I do that so often where I'll get a book and I'll leave it on my shelf for way too long. And then I'll finally read it and I am like beating myself up like, why did I wait so long to pick this book up? It's incredible. It's amazing. And I'm obsessed. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
It happens all the time to me. We just need more time to read.
Yeah, we do it all the time. We're so guilty of it. Kindred Curse Saga is Sparkly Everflame is like probably the worst one that we've done because we kept like mentioning it on the end of every podcast episode, and I had to edit it out in the end because honestly, it must have been like 9 weeks of us going like, "Yeah, we'll read it."
That. Yeah, we'll get to that. And then when we did, we were like, "Why didn't we read this?"
Yeah.
I love that. Sam, do you have any more romantasy read recs?
Yeah, so another one that I feel like doesn't like get a lot of hype across like Book Talk, Bookstagram is a series by Harper L. Woods. The first book is What Lies Beyond the Veil. We're getting book 4 like in a couple of weeks, I think. And this book, this series for me is just so underrated. And I just feel like it's so different to anything that we've read before. So like the premise of the first book is that they're like protected from the Fae by this veil that can't be broken, and obviously what lies beyond the veil, the premise of the book is the veil coming down, and her writing is just so phenomenal. Like this has got like enemies to lovers to enemies to lovers, like the back and forth between it, like the tension, the angsty yearning, burning, like it's some of the best I've read. And like to go from enemies to lovers to touch her and you die, like I just think like, oh my god, like this series has just got everything I could want from a series. It's got the spice, but it's also got the fae and like the overprotective MMC, like the badass FMC. Like it's just got everything that you could want in like a romantasy series for me.
Yeah, I've read some Harper L. Woods and she's incredible. She's great.
Yeah, because the other series, I think, is it The Coven? That's probably her like
exactly.
better. Yeah, that's like, and we found her through. And we always say this, right? I think in the UK, like in the UK, we have Waterstones, which is like our Barnes and Noble, basically. But then we have a chain store called The Works, which is it's a real weird store. It's like an arts and crafts store, but it's not. But it's a bookstore, but it's not. But it's a kids store, but it's not. It's really weird.
Yeah,
but they sell very strange. But they sell books really discounted. Sometimes they're new releases. Sometimes it's stuff that came out ages ago. And what they get in is really random. Like they just randomly had like after what's the duology after Six of Crows, King of Scars, is it that duology?
Wolves of something.
Yeah.
Here behind me. I know. I was trying to see if I can see if I can't read it from here. Rune of Wolves, King of Scars, something like that.
Yeah. Lee Bardugo, like, excellent.
So they'll just have like those two in, or they'll just have Iron Flame. Like it's kind of a bit random what you get, but it's always really, really cheap. And I don't know why. They must have some kind of contract with Harper L. Woods, because whenever one of her books comes out, it's like everywhere in that store. But for super, super cheap, we're really lucky here in the UK that our books are really cheap in comparison to the rest of the world. And that's how I found it. Like they had it all over the shelves. I picked it up, read on the back like Faye. I was like, yeah, I'm sold, like romantasy. So I feel like maybe over here it's a bit more like pushed, but then generally we see it on the Book Talk, and like no one talks about that. Like The Coven is kind of her like well-known series, and nobody really talks about What Lies Beyond the Veil. But that blows my mind, because for me it's like one of the best romantasy books I've ever read. Like it's just got everything. Yeah, I don't know why it's not talked about more, really.
Yeah.
Do we have any honorable mentions we want to bring in?
Ooh, I think a good one, again, might be quite like a typical one, is a series called the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. So the first book is Gild, Gleam,
Glint.
Glow, Glint.
Yeah,
Gold,
and now
I think.
Goldfinch.
And we're literally about to get book 6 in a couple of weeks, and that's the final book in the series. And that's like a I don't know if you know much about it. It's like a romantasy retelling of like Midas's Touch, like the fable Midas's Touch and how
Oh,
he turns everything
yeah.
to gold. But it is like, I think way back when Raven Kennedy first released it, she might have been self-published, but now she's like massive, like book tours are huge, traditionally published. But the first scene in the first book opens with an orgy. And I feel like to have the confidence to like do that in your first book and no one's ever read you before and you're like, I'm just doing this. It's so unique. Like I've never read a book or series like it. When, you know, particularly in the romantasy genre, not that there's anything wrong with things being similar, but like you do get a lot of, you know, similar mixes of tropes and themes. The Plated Prisoner series just does its own thing and it's incredible. The roller coaster you go on with the characters is insane. And like we said, we're about to get the final book really soon, so it'll be a completed series. I think that has to have an honorable mention because it's just, I love it so much.
It's wild. And like the different, are they realms or are they courts in this book? I can't
Realms,
remember.
I think.
Yeah, the different realms are just wild. Like when I think it's either the last book 5 or book 4, when they travel to different realms, and it's just like, it's incredible. Like the things that happen in this book, I like to think that I can predict things in books. I'll always text B and be like, this is what I think is going to happen in this book. This book like took me for 180. Like I was well off the mark with everything I thought was going to happen, because like just some of the stuff that happens in this book, you could not predict it. Like you couldn't pay me enough money to predict that. Like it's amazing.
I have one that I actually just read the arc for, and I think it actually has released by now. I got the arc kind of late for it. It is called Illusion of Stars. And it is a very just like easy, comforting read. That is still a romantasy. It still has some political intrigue. There's some unexpected murders and mysteries going on. And so a little bit of espionage from a very reluctant spy. And that's how you get into your enemies to lovers. And I heard after I read the arc, and I don't really see it so much myself, but after I read the arc, I heard that the MMC is Draco Malfoy coded. And I mean, he's blonde and he does have a snake tattoo, so I can definitely see it. Though I think he's too nice to be Draco Malfoy. I am not a Draco Malfoy fan whatsoever. But it is a very well done debut romantasy. This is the author's first book. Let me look up her name real quick so I can give her a shout out, because I don't. Illusion of Stars by Sarah Marie Page. So yeah, that one was a really cute one and opens up for at least a sequel, and I believe that one is supposed to come out next year, which is exciting. But really well done, just cute, easy read, romantasy, a little on the YA side too. But again, we've got that enemies to lovers. We've got some espionage and some political intrigue and some betrayals and mysteries and murder. So it's got all the fun stuff.
I feel like we're gonna have to add that to TBR, Sam, and it's ever growing. Like
I feel like every time we speak to somebody, our TBR just goes like whoop. Especially if we go on live on TikTok. So many people will send us recommendations while we're chatting, and I'm like, I can't take any more.
Yeah, my TBR is insanely long, and especially because I like to keep buying the stuff on my TBR. So my physical TBR is literally stacks all around me. Like there's books everywhere, you know, really just in case I happen to have a spare 215 years of when I'm not doing anything, you know?
Yeah, you
just
never know.
You never know.
Yeah, we it got to the point where like we were getting so many, we decided now we're doing like an author spotlight every month now, because we were just getting like so many requests for books, and we always want to read, particularly like indie authors. Like some of the best books we've ever read have been by self-published indie authors. But it was getting to the point where we were like, and the thing is, like, you know, in podcasting world, often you have to like pre-record. So sometimes we're like pre-recorded for like a month and a half, 2 months, and you're like, yes, I want to say yes, but we're talking like the new year. So we've started doing 2 a month, like an author spotlight, where we're going to read the books and kind of do like a spoiler-free episode, I guess, so that people can listen and get a recommendation. But although it'll help our TBR, it just means now like the majority of these books are series. So really all we've done is made it worse, because we've now just added like way more books to our TBR than we actually are probably going to read.
Yeah, having a book podcast really is not the best way to get through your TBR. You'd think it would be, but it's not at all. No, we're just making it worse.
Yeah.
Digging
Always
ourselves deeper.
So much worse.
I think in terms of honorable mention, I think for me, it would be Jennifer L. Armentrout, her From Blood and Ash series, but like specifically book 1 and 2, because I don't know what she put in book 1 and 2, but I read them back to back on a plane to New York. I was literally sat there like kicking my feet, twirling my hair. I was so in love with these main characters that I was just like, me and my partner went to New York. I literally didn't speak to him. We were on the plane for like 8 hours together, and I was just with my Kindle. I was like, I can't believe this. And I hadn't downloaded like the next book because I was like, oh, I'm not going to need it. It'll be fine. They didn't have like free Wi-Fi on the plane. I can't remember who we flew with. And I was like, but I need it. So I paid for Wi-Fi just to be able to download the next book, because I was like in so deep with the characters and I was like so in love with it that I was like, I'm just gonna have to pay, because I can't not know what comes next. And like, as much as I enjoyed our trip to New York, it was amazing. We saw loads of things. I was like, can't wait to fly home and read my book again.
Way to do it.
So, Jennifer Armentrout has like this, those first 2 books, like there's something.
Yeah, she's really great. Incredible. So this has been really wonderful. I have really appreciated having Sam and B on here today, both of you, for our top romantasy reads. I hope everyone found some great recs to add to their TBR. You're welcome, and I'm sorry at the same time. Thank you guys so much for coming on with me today.
Oh, thank you for having us. It's been wonderful.
So much fun. Thank you.
A pod of Smut and Wingspan. I just want to say, I was trying to say it earlier, and I said, oh my God, how did I say it? I said, a pot of smud, and I'm like, wait, what? And I just like sat and stared at a wall for a minute. I'm like, yes, a pot of smud.
When we like started, B couldn't say the name of the podcast. She'd introduce herself and then she'd let me do the podcast because she's like, I can't say it.
I really didn't think it through. Like when we picked the name, I was naive, and then actually saying it on recording is one of the hardest things to do. Like it's so difficult.
So yeah, everyone check out a pot. No, I just did it again. Make sure you check out a pod of Smut and Wingspan. Yeah, no, I get that. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @MustLoveBooksPodcast. Thank you and happy reading.
Ugh, spam calls. Sound familiar? Introducing Line 2. Get a second phone number right on your existing phone. Imagine discounts, appointments, online forms. Handle it all without giving out your personal number. It's like having a secret weapon against spam. And when those unwanted calls sneak through, boom, blocked. No more interruptions, no more stress. Stay connected, stay protected. Keep your main number safe and out of harm's way. Ready to take back your phone? Visit line2.com/audio or download Line 2 in the App Store today.